Live widely and live intensely. Go for hikes, rock climb, scuba dive, swim, sail, skydive. Learn how to knit and join a knitting circle. Join an equestrian club and learn how to ride. Go to like the SCA and get hit upside the head with swords while you're wearing a helmet. Make friends. Make 1,000 different friends from 1,000 different walks of life, and do as much as you can in as many different ways, and you'll be better able to communicate the things that you want to write, and you'll be able to imagine and conceptualize of a much broader set of lives and experiences to draw on for your fiction.
This is the CritRPG podcast, your one-stop shop for everything litRPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the CritRPG podcast, the only podcast who invites people so fair they're named after it. With me today is Aaron Pastafarian Sofaer, who writes Quill Still. How are you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
Okay. I am not shabby. I'm going to be late for work at this rate, but I'm going to be okay. Yeah, West Coast is always a little adventure because either I record at night when I'm super frazzled, or I record in the morning when I have to do it before work. So we'll see. But without further ado, sell me on your book.
Quill Still is a cozy, queer slice of life novel about civics. It is an adventure into not the dangerous dungeon, not the progression grind. It is a journey into a world that is kinder and more considerate. One where you, through the eyes of the main character, Sophie Nadash, can just learn to sort of relax and take it easy, look at a world that is where public policy is done more on purpose and things work better as a society.
Mm-hmm. So a bit of a utopia in the traditional sense of the literary term.
A little bit, though. The utopia in a literary way, I understand it as sort of a society that sort of approaches this goodness, at least in a superficial way, but which looks at itself as though it is what it wants to be. And the kingdom of Shem looks at itself and sees mostly what it still needs to work on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I don't even know how I would describe that, but yeah, I think you make it a reasonable explanation of what that book is. Okay, cool. When, how, and why that book?
So, the how is, I started writing it, and then next thing I knew, I had written a lot of it. In all seriousness, the core of the idea came to me as this sort of these three ideas. One of them was a 1,000 word rant that I posted about patent law. One of them was this notion of like, if you want your municipality to be an official, like the litRPG system considers you a municipality kind of place, you need a library that has like a librarian who can use interlibrary loan and like a whole lot of books. Because what kind of town doesn't have a library? A shitty town, that's what. And the third was this notion of like, well, what if I had like someone who was a crafter, who was a woman who was just incredibly gay and got to like flirt with the tall barbarian lady and all of the other people who were buying her wares. And so the story sort of coalesced around that. And I guess that's also part of the why. I had this idea in my head, and I hadn't intended for it to be the next thing I wrote after I finished Frameshift, which was my previous serial, but it just took over. And I had been reading a bunch of Elie Motset Jr., Medecet, I don't actually know how it's pronounced, The Magic of Recluse, and so I wanted to write a story that had like a woodworking and enchanting. And instead I wrote a story that had alchemy and divinity. That's just like where it took me.
I mean, yeah.
And when was a couple of years ago, I had just finished up Frameshift. I wanted to write something very different. It was towards the end of it was sort of towards the end of my family locking down when we'd gotten our vaccinations, and I was sort of starting to re-experience how nice it was to spend time with other people and have grandparents around to help with the kid.
Nice. It reminds me a little bit of what you're explaining. Reminds me of this used to be about dungeons.
Yes. Alexander Rails' This Used to Be About Dungeons is absolutely one of the main inspirations for writing this. The success that his story had was really a big part of me saying to myself, oh, I can actually write this. And if I write it well, people will actually read it.
And was it successful?
I mean, define successful, right? More than 2,000 people read it on Royal Road. It very briefly hit #1 on Rising Stars, which was, I mean, both of those things were beyond my expectation. I got a publishing contract with one of the publishers in our space, Riverfolk Books. And I don't know, I've had a lot of people tell me that they read it and they loved it and that they found it emotionally affecting. In all of these ways, it has been a success. Financially, not so much, but that's okay. It was my Amazon debut, and hopefully book 2 will be a much bigger success in that regard.
All right. I mean, I always come back to this topic about like you have to decide what success means to you before you do something, because otherwise you're just going to shift your goalpost the entire time.
Absolutely. And I absolutely found myself doing that, and I had to remind myself, no, I set specific targets for what would be success. I have exceeded those targets. This is a success.
Yep, exactly. Because I kind of want to like talk about the idea of like writing to market a little bit, because I feel as though I haven't for a while. So obviously Quill Still is not writing to market. it's like I think Twice wrote this marketing thread on Reddit. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he defines like the anti-market. And you just were like, oh, you know what? Jumping right in there. That's me.
Yeah. And you know, he is someone worth reading. His advice is absolutely worth reading and taking seriously. But I don't entirely agree with it. I think that I think when people talk about writing to market, there's a tendency to sort of elide what market they're talking about. And if you're trying to make $1 million off of a series, then yeah, you're writing agency fantasy that has a protagonist who does violence while not trying to challenge people's notions of society and probably while being a guy, though. I mean, Azranth Healer did huge numbers, so that's not necessarily dispositive. But the number of people who hit that mark is like 5. Whereas, the number of people who are making a living off of writing web serials is not a small number nowadays. And a lot of those people are writing to the anti-market. And
Name 5.
Name 5? Okay. I believe Argus is making a living off of this nowadays. And I know that Hazel Young, aka HY, is making a living writing Catalepsis and Necroepigologos. Natalie Thundamu Maher is writing nowadays Are You Even Human? And her magical robot story, whose name I can't ever remember. Raven's Dagger. I'm sorry, but like, despite the fact that Raven is delightful and their stories are super successful, that is not writing to market in the way that marketing guide describes.
Absolutely not. Raven's Dagger and I talked about this a lot because I'm his agent. No, like it's I have to see this. Like this is absolutely he found his niche.
Yeah.
Cute lesbians doing violence.
Absolutely. Cute girls doing cute things. And
also genocide.
Yeah, like that sounds like cute things. We stand a girl boss. And for a 5th one, I'll mention Purple Cat Girl, who is a Scribble Hub author who writes extremely smutty, extremely queer web fiction, most of it pretty short, all of it too smutty to be on Royal Road, I would say, except for maybe like A Date with Fate.
Smut Hub.
Yeah, I mean, Shub is what it is, but there's like a whole sort of nexus of queer authors on there writing stuff that is of incredibly high quality and making a living from it.
I mean,
probably
that's
the
true.
highest quality of which is Quiet Valerie. So,
Like,
yeah.
no, I think that's true. If you were doing the meme, I would be saying, no, I set the bar too low. That's on me. But because like making a living is like one thing, right? So I think Raven's Dagger posts his earnings every year, and they're not shirtaloons, right?
I mean, yeah, but the point is that neither is anyone's, right? Like there's like 5 people who make that much money.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, to make that much money, you have to be writing to the absolute mass market. But when I say that, like Legends and Lattes was a huge success, and it's got this sort of like unchallenging agency focus, but it's still a departure from what most people on Royal Road think of as the mass market, in much the same way that people look at Beware of Chicken and think it's not writing to the mass market. And those both are, I think.
Beware of Chicken absolutely wrote against the market. Didn't write against the market. Beware of Chicken pretends to write against all the tropes while hitting all the tropes.
Absolutely.
And also, Literature and Latte, that's Scrivener, my God. Bookshelves and Bone Dust, I won. That's not litRPG. I had Travis Baldry on this podcast saying, that's not litRPG, and I don't want to write one. So that's cozy fantasy. That's different.
Sure. But when I read Legends and Lattes, I felt like I was reading the best World of Warcraft fanfic I had ever read.
Absolutely. But
okay, you're right. It's not litRPG.
Yeah. We have to like also maybe also specify like what is a litRPG, but I think that goes too far. Because it's Then we have a Wittgenstein problem. Wittgenstein like famously talked about like categories, and he said that like anything can be a game if a definition of game is big enough. But if you make it too small, some games aren't games, right? So he came up with this wonderful definition that is very Wittgenstein, where he says, a game is a game if all parties involved with it agree that it's a game.
That's so Wittgenstein. I did not remember that, but that is such a Wittgenstein definition. I love it.
Such a cop out.
It's
like, not my problem. Someone else does it.
Yeah, I was at a panel at Dragon Con where Rin was on the panel, and she was like, I hate definition games. Let's not play definition games. And I agree with that, but at the same time, you're right. Legends and Lattes is not litRPG.
Yeah. Because like, I mean, when we're talking about like writing to market, like we're talking about the litRPG market, the progression fantasy market. And the progression fantasy market is mostly as Think Twice described it. It's about hunky dudes, spell swords. I recently had a call with Phil Tucker. And we spent like quite a lot of time lamenting that. Not like lamenting it, but he said like, hey, look, like Bastion's doing really well. Dawn of the Void did really well. He's got a couple of series going that went really, really well. So if I were in his shoes and knowing the way he writes and what he's written before, I think I might feel stifled at some point a little bit, because we're not romance, not yet, right? We don't have to like hit all those beats at the exact right time. But dungeon cores, for example, have been solved. People know how to write dungeon cores. Like you have to hit certain beats at certain points, which is very interesting to me. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is that like there's so much variety in what people do with dungeon cores. You've got stuff like Oasis Core, which was a complete departure from something like Thieves Dungeon.
Does it not have wakes up, learns system, gets snappy sidekick? First group of adventurers comes in. First group of adventurers is either super evil and gets demolished immediately, or is actually kind of nice, so becomes friends for life. Then dungeon expands. Then at some point there's going to be exploration of the outer world.
It does not have that cycle.
Awesome. I'm gonna read that.
But you can also look at like I think it's like This Fallen World and Engineer's Dungeon or something along those lines that hits those beats, but does it in like a deconstructive way, which is I don't know. I find most of the dungeon core story that I've read to sort of leave me a little bit cold. Yeah. And by comparison, I'm totally here for someone who writes basically like dungeon core meets Factorio level of logistics. And yeah.
Anything can be a game, so anything can be litRPG?
Yeah, we'll go with that. I mean yeah. We've gotten litRPG romance. Haven't we?
Like what? wait. Again, successfully. Now
I mean, there's let's not obliterate.
True. But was that successful?
Again, like, what skill is successful are we talking about?
Yeah. So, like, financially successful. Like,
I have absolutely no idea.
Talking about like it's not on KU, so we don't know, or in Kindle. It's so like my question more aimed toward the fact that like it's the same thing as like in video games, right? So whenever someone, like, I got a couple of friends who make video games, and whenever someone asks them like, hey, like what's the best advice you can give like someone who wants to make an indie game or like a video game? I said, don't. Because the game market is crashing. I saw this like long ass documentary about it yesterday. It was very sobering. Basically, we have reached market saturation. No one's noticed.
I think I read that same article. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a video documentary. It was very, 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 very well explained. But I think it might be based on an article. Yes.
That, or I read an article based on the documentary.
Yeah.
I mean it's funny. There's an author, John Scalzi, who some people might have heard of, and his advice that he gives people who want to start writing as their day jobs is marry someone who gets health insurance through their day job.
Or move to Europe. Yeah, where you don't get bankrupt.
Yeah, I mean, this is not just an indie publishing problem. It's not just a litRPG problem. Extremely successful trad-pub authors are out there saying, my partner kept her job, my partner kept his job so that we could have health insurance.
Yeah.
And
it's insane. Like, it's very hard not to kind of contemplate, like, for every Brandon Sanderson, for every Sherlock, for every Stephen King, there are tens of thousands of people who cannot earn money with their art, which is always very, very tough to consider. I mean, even Phil, who, I think he writes full time. I know that, right? He's got like a very successful series, but he is considered like quote unquote mid tier, which I think is kind of insulting. But the amount of skill it needs to get there, right? The amount of time, effort is just frankly just insane. And I think to some degree, making a living off of art has always been hard. And like, you always needed a patron. Da Vinci had one. So several actually. But it just, I don't think we are at a point in our evolution as humanity where we can go like, well, everyone can just do art. So it's sad, but it is what it is. Yeah.
And I think maybe things were better a couple of years ago or whatever, but like, I think right now I'm going to go against the trend of this conversation, despite the fact that I agree with everything you've said. And I'm going to say that we have never before been in as good a place for people to make a living doing art. The ubiquitous availability of platforms like Patreon and Ko-fi and itch.io, and the fact that, as much as I hate Kindle Unlimited having so much of the market and its exclusivity clause, the fact that you can take a book, put it on Kindle Unlimited, and pull in a little bit of money here and there to supplement the Patreon income has allowed a truly astonishing number of people to eke out a living, which, I mean...
Supplement your Patreon income? For most authors I know, KU is the main source of income besides audiobooks.
Yeah, but the thing is that our community is a lot better at monetizing Kindle Unlimited than most of the people out there who are publishing books.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, totally agree. There are a lot of like options available right now. It just kind of irks me that
Now, I mean, I completely agree. Like, I'm I'm a software developer.
Mm-hmm.
I do like software engineering. I do cloud things. And would I rather be writing full time and turning that into a career? Absolutely. Is that going to happen? No.
Mm-hmm.
There's no plausible it is absolutely not plausible that I will ever make that much money, have that much success from my books.
Mm-hmm.
But
Which is why it's important to have something more, have a main job that you actually like. Writing books is very unlikely to replace that at any point for any given author. You are most likely earning more money from McDonald's than you do from writing in your life. As like a random person, if you are a writer, not just LitRPG in general, overall, you are more like going to McDonald's and getting a job there will earn you more money than writing, on average.
McDonald's actually pays more than people think.
Yeah, because like no one wants to work there.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
they get such a bad rap, which is like ironic.
food service really, really sucks. I worked food service. I recommend it to everyone who thinks food service is an easy job. Please, if you think food service is an easy job, or if you think retail is an easy job,
Oh God.
by all means, spend some time working those.
Yeah, I did work at GameStop for a year and some change after high school.
My condolences.
It wasn't bad. Boss was pretty cool, but at the same time, you know that like Viva la Dirt League thing about like working at this game store, this comedy show on YouTube. Most of those things are really accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like anyway, I think we went on like a really long ass tangent, which was intentional. I was going to say intangible, but that was not the pun I wanted to make here. If you do want to still try your luck at writing, which I think everyone should do, it's a good hobby, right? And if it like, do it as a hobby until something hits, is my advice always. But what's your best advice you've ever gotten as a writer that could help people do that?
Get a hobby. So
Like
no,
what?
I couldn't resist putting it that way. But the best advice I got about writing specifically was live. It was live widely and live intensely. Go for hikes, rock climb, scuba dive, swim, sail, skydive. Learn how to knit and join a knitting circle. Join an equestrian club and learn how to ride. Go to like the SCA and get hit upside the head with swords while you're wearing a helmet. It's just make friends, make 1,000 different friends from 1,000 different walks of life, and do as much as you can in as many different ways, and you'll be better able to communicate the things that you want to write, and you'll be able to imagine and conceptualize of a much broader set of lives and experiences to draw on for your fiction.
Yeah. I can't remember the amount of stuff I learned from just random meetups that helped me in my writing. And not just like writing meetups. I don't even go to those. Like weird agile meetups or I don't know, like other stuff like that.
Oh yeah, there's
Board
bits.
games.
There's totally bits, particularly in Frameshift, which is the serial that I finished before writing Quill Still, that I just straight up pulled from when I was like going to various tech conventions for my day job and being like, this is funny and I will probably use it in a book. And some of those things I did wind up using in a book.
Oh my God, yeah. So you were drawing from your quality of life. Little bit.
Most assuredly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was a quality assessment.
Can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a back seat to staying alive. But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read. Our comeback tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited, October 25th.
Anyway, now that the test is done, what would you say is one thing that you've learned while writing that you're doing differently now than when you started?
I have gotten a lot better at including visual descriptions.
Okay.
I still have to work on that. But when I started writing, I have this thing where I don't actually think of people or stuff really in terms of visual descriptions in the same way most other people seem to. I think of things in vibes-based descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I write. You know, I'll describe someone's vibes. I'll describe their voice. Mostly what I'll describe is I'll describe what they evoke in other people.
Mm.
And so it's my reflex, it's my instinct to use the other people as a lens through which to describe a character.
Mm-hmm.
And I consistently forgot, not even failed to, but straight up forgot to offer visual descriptions of characters in my writing.
Mm.
And until my beta readers were like, Pasta, we don't know what any of these people look like.
Yeah. You can infer that by my description of like how they make tea. Don't you know?
Yeah. Like, don't you know that like this kind of person, the person who embodies the tropes that this character embodies, if they're responding to another person in this way, that must mean that they look like no.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah, sure. 100%. Now, like, I found that I did the same thing, and if I were trying to be mean to myself, I would say that, oh yeah, that's because I don't like making eye contact with people. It's something I learned. Like, I used to do that like a lot when I was a kid, but then I kind of like learned not to do it. And these days I'm just kind of like, I don't know. It's something that when I do it, it's fine, but I'm just like the hurdle of getting there, right? So I don't think of people as like, you know, like you said, it's physical descriptions. Like, it's hard for me. But what I found is very good is just kind of like very broad characteristica, right? Like, yeah, like he was I don't know, for this one character I'm writing right now, long red hair, and then like by describing the hair in a certain way, you also describe the character.
Yeah,
which is always fun.
I call them anchors.
Mm-hmm.
One anchor description, something to sort of anchor the character's visual portrayal in the minds of the readers.
Mm.
And, you know, apparently hands are very traditional in I guess especially in romance. There's this idea that like you can really like describe someone's hands, and it says a lot about them as a character and about their aesthetic in general.
Ayo. Sorry. In romance? Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
He had huge hands. Huge hands.
Hey, what can you say? A man who has huge hands definitely is going to have huge gloves.
Absolutely. huge, throbbing hands.
Mm-hmm.
No, I totally get it. Like, okay, so, but dude, please do tell me more about, without me making this a joke, what exactly about hands can we describe?
Oh man, there's this moment in a Tamara Pierce novel where this character who is not from like the big city where court is held is at the sparring ground looking at one of the people who's sparring, and her hands are they're calloused. There is like Caladri looks at the way this woman is like holding a sword, and the way like the muscles in her wrist and fingers, and like the sort of the mastery of swordplay that is reflected in the hand, and the description of this character who is so obviously like a martial character, a badass woman, is really anchored in that scene on this woman's hands. And
Nice.
this is and then all of Caladri's conclusions are immediately subverted because the woman is a noble, Alana of Trebond, who was thus challenging the character Caladri's assumption that the nobility are useless and can't fight. And so, yeah, Tamara Pierce just like, it's not, and to be clear, this is not a romance novel. It's just a way of talking about not just the character that's being described, but also the character doing the describing by anchoring the description of Alana on Caladri's observation of her hand.
Also tells you a lot about the main character, which I always like. This is probably like a spoiler, but I have the scene planned out just like this morning. That's going to be not in the newer Torchbearer books, but in some others. Maybe it's like a side story or something. But because like for some reason with Torchbearer, I have like this very lyrical style. You know, someone's hair is not just red; it's like autumn set ablaze. Cool. I like that shit. I like some purplish prose sometimes.
As a treat.
And Sam reads like things like that the entire time, right? So she thinks like that, and then but when she talks, she's very like short, snappy. She's a manager, and or / like has been a queen, and then at some point she says something like very poetic, and so I was like, "Whoa, that's very poetic. We wouldn't have thought about that." Just like, what do you mean? Like, you're not a very poetic person, Sam. She's like, what? So yeah, it's fun. Totally. Okay, tell me about one book that you love, and also tell me why it is awesome.
Okay, so I knew you were going to ask this question going into this, and I literally stayed up trying to figure out the answer. Lois McMaster Bujold's The Curse of Chalion is fucking amazing.
The Curse of Chalion?
Yeah, Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Bujold. Bujold is one of the grandmasters of science fiction. She is an immensely influential sci-fi and fantasy author who is just genuinely one of the greatest ever, and is still writing awesome stuff. I actually met my wife because I searched for Bujold on OkCupid and messaged her on the basis of like, I want to go on dates with someone who like has a shared interest, and she was looking for someone to talk about those books with. So, but The Curse of Chalion I absolutely love it for having a character who has been there, done that, and is absolutely fucking done with it. but not like has just like left the plot, right? In Beware of Chicken, the main character is a cultivator who goes nope and leaves. In the Curse of Chalion, the main character goes, I would love to live a quiet life and not have to like be part of the struggle and the striving, but I'm needed. And I'm called, I will serve. The Castellar de Carazil becomes the tutor and advisor to a young noblewoman, and there's like politics and shenanigans and some action. There's not as much action as there would be if he weren't him, because he does not want confrontation. He does not want to get into fights. He has been a soldier, and he hates war. It's also the world building. It is phenomenal. Bujold delivers us the world of 5 gods. It is a world with gods that feel both other and relatable, that feel sort of genuinely divine, and whose society is constructed around them, and frankly isn't there, and isn't just a pastiche of like a mishmash of Christian stuff. And it's a world with heresy and with like competing religious beliefs about these gods.
There's My Little Pony in it? Sorry. You get it because it's a joke, because it's...
I was expecting a Warhammer 40k joke, actually,
yes.
because of heresy.
Yes.
And also, I admit, I am, I'm in my late 30s, and I really appreciate that Kazaril is not young. He has been around the block. He's not like having his first adventure. He is not emotionally insecure and immature.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
I like it.
It's great. Everyone should read it.
I like it when there's like a certain like emotional maturity to like the gruffness of people, because like I think it's one of the reasons why He Who Fights with Monsters does so well, because like while Jason is a bit of an edgelord, or I will always quote this, but Shirt was on this podcast and he said like, well, yeah, Jason is an SJW cuck, so which I thought was awesome. But
the man is a troll.
He's amazing.
He is amazing and wonderful.
Yeah.
He is a pillar of the community and also a troll.
Yes. I'm not going to make those jokes that I have right in my head right now, but there's a chance you might actually listen to this podcast, so I'm going to shut up. But I think that's one of the reasons why it works so well, is because like Jason reflects, and he has like some really hard world weary wisdoms that you really shouldn't have when you're like 26 years old. But I think, how old is Jason actually? He's 26, 27, right? Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyway. And I think that's kind of cool. I'm reading the Weirkey Chronicles. Do you know them? Start with Soulholm.
On my list, but I haven't gotten around to them yet.
The system is really interesting. If you're stripping away all the trimmings, it's basically a base building litRPG, and you're building a base inside your soul, and that somehow like makes you stronger. And it's called Soulholm because you start with a house, right? So build a foundation, and then on the foundation you like put like a central chamber, and basically you build like this wizard tower, and then depending on what is in that wizard tower, you get stronger. And I'm totally going to steal that for one of my stories. But
that sounds awesome, and I might also steal it.
It is really, really well done. Like the system is absolutely stellar. The main character takes some time to get used to because this is a spoiler. He dies on the first page, and it's a recursor story. So he write. It's a little bit of like what I wanted to do in Torchbearer, but I gotta say he does it way better than me. Where loses all his friends and goes back and like gets Isekai'd again and comes back with like revenge. And the fact that he has like spent 40 years in this old world just has been glossed over. It's like, yeah, I did that and I came back. And then what I think is really cool is that through the story, he struggles with that. And there's actually like a couple of revelations where it's like, I can't just think of like these 40 years as a side quest. I had a wife. I had like all the other stuff. And like, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. And now I'm just like this really grumpy old dude stuck in the body of like a 25-year-old. And that also obviously like has an impact in the story. And I am very, very sparse for criticism on this podcast, but I have to say it because for this, since that everything has to make sense. While I'm not quite buying him being so gruff, right? There's some parts of it where I'm like, yeah, not just being edgy, dude. He's not a likable character at all, at least not for me. But I can totally see where the author is going with it, and I think it's a super good attempt. It's better than 99% of what I've read in most power fantasies. And I think Weirkey really stands out in attempting something like that. And while I was hoping that like the other side characters had some more personality sooner, I do think it's a really good book. It's a really freaking good book. So
I'll bump it up my list.
Yeah.
My list is not short.
Yes.
Whomst Among Us, etc., etc.
I am struggling to read all the stuff that my authors are putting out, to the point where I actually had I'm declining people left and right, even though I really think their stuff is really great, because I just don't have the time. I've recently signed with David Niemitz, who was on here for a while ago for Guildmage, and I couldn't be more ecstatic about that. Guildmage is such a good book. Have you read that?
I have not. I gotta put that on my list.
I think you might really enjoy that. I'm just gonna pause.
Guildmage Apprentice.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And also his podcast.
That's
is
my
great.
read later.
Yeah, David is like a gem. Like, I'm honestly, I'm proud that this man trusts me that much. Like, I really am. Like, that's awesome.
Aww.
Yeah. So, yeah. But that all being like going aside, I really like it when there's a certain world weariness in these characters, when it feels a bit more adult, and like not everyone is like slightly sociopathic to completely sociopathic. Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing a complete psychopath?
I have, actually. I spent a little bit of time trying it and decided that I didn't enjoy it. I really, really hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. The closest I've gotten, I wrote a novella called "And They Who Fall Shall Rest in Power," which, not a little. I guess technically kind of litRPG. Yes, litRPG. It's system apocalypse style litRPG, but because all of the incursions on Earth get dealt with by the militaries of the world in ways that the system doesn't approve of, nobody levels up for the entire backstory until like most of a decade after. There's most of a decade between chapter 1 and chapter 2. But it's extremely political.
Mm-hmm.
to the point where like the I mean, it was my way of writing my political brainworms out. And the main character, over the course of the story, it becomes obvious that she has completely lost the plot. And that's the closest I've come to writing an amoral or sociopathic character and been able to stick with the story for more than a chapter.
Okay, the first step I want to ask, because I'm very intrigued. So wait, you're saying that like the military kills all the monsters?
Yeah.
Do they level up?
No. You don't gain levels unless you use means and methods that the system approves of, and Hellfire missiles and like napalm and white phosphorus are not system approved.
Who greenlit that system? Damn it! Actually, big shout outs to Dr. Doritos MD, who writes Manifest Fantasy, which is like literally that. It's like tanks against trolls. But it's Stargate, but on the other side there aren't like ancient Egyptians, but elves and wizards. So you have like Stargate SG-1, but they joined an Adventurers Guild. It is charming.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome, and I have just added it to my read later.
Yeah, and like another one of my clients, by the way. I'm very sorry for selling this out. Like this is not meant like this, but like I'm so excited about it. His second one is like, hey, in all this Japanese anime, why do they always like summon high schoolers when they could summon Delta Squad?
I mean, that's a good question.
And so they summon Delta Squad.
Yeah, I mean, like the almost canonical answer is that like they're summoning people who are immature and can be socially manipulated.
Well, we call this magic. No, okay, so like I think I'm not quite sure how we explained it. I forget, but I think it's like high schoolers, like you lose magical potential over time when you're in another world.
Yeah.
So like that's how he explains it, and I think we're coming up to an arc where these like Delta Force people are actually like meeting one of those like high school isekai like overpowered main character people. I think it's awesome. That guy can write.
That does sound awesome. Yeah. I will add that story too to my ever increasing list of things to read next.
Yes. Also, if you guys are listening to this and you haven't added Quill and Still to your ever increasing listening list, you should do it. It's I found the general idea of it, like this cozy fantasy, cozy crafty fantasy, but also their civics. I found it intriguing. I really do. Because usually I do progression fantasy on this because, well, it is a progression fantasy podcast. But I made an exception.
Yeah, and I mean there are numbers that go up.
Yes.
There is it is litRPG. There is a system. Amusingly, I've been told by a lot of people that are, in their like 70s and 80s that I don't take the system seriously enough, that like the main character is too like, what even is the system thing? And I think that's hilarious that they think I don't know. It's a system. Like the system exists for good reason. It exists. It has a purpose in the society, and the society shapes it in turn.
I always feel as though if you don't consider what the system does to your entire society, you really should reconsider it, because like there has to be a reason why someone stays a farmer.
Yeah.
Ben Carey does this really well. It's just like society forces you to stay a farmer. And like they actually have like these like I can't spoil it, but they have certain systems where the nobility exploits the farming class to farm more experience in ways that aren't accessible to other people. Ben does such a good job. But how do you solve it?
I mean, there are, when you have a fair bit of magic and a lit RPG system, if your society is not particularly concerned with um, maximizing productivity and instead is concerned with basically maximizing human flourishing, being a farmer probably isn't that bad. You don't need all that many farmers. And like, it's just, you've got all of this magic that makes all of the work easier. In Quill Still in particular, the village of Kibosh is an outring village, which is to say it is on the outskirts of the country, and it is less farming cereal grains and more shepherds, actually shoatherds. They are fantasy creatures that are kind of halfway between a sheep and a goat. Yeah, so they're mostly it's like shoatherds instead of farmers, but they have cereal grains. It's an important part of their diet. They eat an enormous amount of food because all of their magic and all of the systemic and arcane magic is literally fueled from the calories they eat. It's not and so they eat a ton of food. And I actually spent some time calculating, okay, let's assume that between their Renaissance tech level and magic, they have modern levels of agricultural output. How many of them are farmers? How much are they farming? How much land do they use? This is the kind of I'm a nerd. What can I say?
That's good. It's fun. It's fun. I was just wondering if you would also steal from Rin and add some Dickens. You know about the Dickens, right? It's in Dungeon Crawl Online. They're one of the first level is kind of like farm related, and they have these. I don't want to butcher it, but I think it's divine chickens. So they're Dickens.
Now I remember her mentioning that in when she was on your show. I actually have not read that series.
Yeah,
it's on my list.
There you go. It's on the list. Yeah,
it's already on the list.
There's not there's so much. I wish there was a way that would distribute readership more evenly. That's not based on the Matthews principle, but if wishes were horses, beggars would probably breed them and make a lot of money with them.
And while we're at it, I would rather wish that everyone had the time to read all of our stories.
Well, I think that would break some sort of space and time continuum, because I think there's too many books.
I'm okay with that.
Actually, no. There's way more readers than there are. Okay, but one single individual cannot read every single RPG book. That's impossible.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if I'm going to wish for something, it's going to be that all of the readers had all of the time they needed to read all of the books that they want.
Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Because how would I not wish that? That's what I want for myself.
Yeah, that's nice. I have one more thing about the psychopath thing we talked about earlier. I have a story that's called The Starlit Night. I'm not quite sure if that fits, because I want to have this whole Starlit Night theme where Star Sword and everything. But basically the idea is Dexter, but it's an Isekai apocalypse. So system arrives, everyone gets gang pressed into the trans-dimensional army, and then it's well, here you go. This is your Russian World War II starter kit. You get ammunition, you get a rifle, let's go. Or in this case, it's you get a shield, you get a sword, go. Enjoy. And the MC spent that afternoon, it was his birthday, so he just got ready for System Day. And there was no one coming to his birthday party because he started a huge fight at school, and broke someone's arm on purpose, because he's just a psychopath. He just doesn't care. And his mom's you can't do that, not again. And the entire idea is how do you try to be good if you are in a situation where killing people is actively rewarded and you have absolutely no empathy because you're literally incapable of having it because you don't know what emotions are, except for rage. And is willpower enough to keep you being a good person in this case? I don't know because I don't have the plot yet, but I think it's a good start.
Yeah, I mean, there's a series by S.L. Huang, the Cass Russell series. The first book is Zero Sum Game. That is, it's one of the only books I've ever read that has like a sociopathic / psychopathic main character that I actually enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Cass Russell series sort of suggests the answer is, well, if what you want out of your life requires you to construct an outwards facing persona that has empathy and live according to that, then maybe you will. Because what you want out of life requires it.
There's a wonderfully funny anecdote. The guy who invented the psychopathy scale for his patients looked at it and was like, hey, wait, I'm on that. And he found out that he's a psychopath.
That amuses me.
Yeah. Because psychopathy is like a very, very like long ass scale. And on the other side, there's like hyper empathy, which is not good to have. Where basically you feel too much and everything overwhelms you the entire time. But the psychopathy study was actually pretty funny because like that guy was like, yeah, I'm a psychopath. Oh, funny. But yeah, then we have like the whole like dark triad going on and like what makes someone like actually like a risk to society. Why has psychopathy been positively selected over generations? Do you know? Because when there are 500 people and one bridge and we're 50 people and we need to get the fuck out of need to get heck out of Dodge, and then we need to have one guy who doesn't know what fear is to stand on that bridge and kill as many as he can while we get the fuck out of Dodge.
It seems plausible, but also a very convenient and untestable conclusion.
All of evolutionary stuff is very much conjecture, but it kind of makes sense.
I guess you could also construct it as psychopathy is something that allows people to manipulate their social environment to get a higher share of resources.
It doesn't allow them to. I would object to that.
Allows in sort of the like, sorry, I'm when I do, there's a system analysis framework that I've used probably too many times that uses allows to.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I often joke that there's only one conclusion I will permit myself to believe from evolutionary psychology, and that is that humans have never been individualist. We have always lived in communities.
Yep.
And anyone who has ever been a parent, and I mean like an involved parent, not an absentee parent, knows exactly how true this is, because goddamn, like you've got people practically dying giving birth constantly, and babies just like spend the first year spending like most of their time either needing to be rocked to stay asleep or screaming.
Yeah,
that's
or
that's
getting
basically
fed.
Or getting fed. But like it's kind of I don't know. I'm there's so many different ways to construct an explanatory theory for evolutionary psychology, and it's so hard to like meaningfully test them.
Yes, because you can't time travel. But like, there's one last fun fact. So people often ask like psychologists, like, how do I know my child is not a psychopath? And the answer is, well, most likely your child is a psychopath. It's just that most people stop being one at around age 12 or 13, right? Because like your amygdala, that's actually been studied. And I'm quite sure I'm butchering this, but this has been studied. Children have they literally can't have empathy up until a certain age. It starts like it develops. It's this very slow thing. It develops automatically because you have like a thing in your brain. It's called the amygdala. It's like in your forebrain that actually is like there for emotional regulation, and that also has a lot of empathy in it, right? Because it is very, very good for you to know how other people feel if you're living in a society, because it makes things easier. Psychopaths never get that, so because they can't relate. Right? They understand how other people are feeling on a conceptual level, but they can't feel it themselves because they have no emotions. Very interesting stuff. But yeah, research for a book that I'm probably never going to write.
Well, maybe I'll look at that today. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah, of course. One of my very close friend of mine is a psychologist who researches psychopaths, specifically female psychopaths. She wrote like 3 books about it, like Germany bestseller stuff. Cool. Yeah, very pop psychology, her writing, but she's a good scientist. Anyway, I can recommend them. Lydia Benecke, if you guys want to go and get that and translate it with Google Translate or whatever. But it's really good stuff. Anyway, last but not least, I want you to do some shout-outs.
Shout-outs. So, shout out to, do you want specifically like web serials, or can I go a little?
Just five or six people who you think should deserve more attention. I'm thinking more of like the shout-out as in the Royal Road shout-out.
Right. All right. So the number one is Graydon Saunders. Mm-hmm. Graydon Saunders, his books are available everywhere other than Amazon. His Commonweal series is incredible, unbelievable. The only downside is that he basically writes fantasy novels that are a civil engineering manual lost in a fairy tale.
Nice.
He writes very well, mostly an engineer, and it's just like the world building, the like subtlety of characterization, the amount of meaning and stuff that he can pack into one terse sentence is unbelievable. So Graydon Saunders, the first book is The March North. It's an Anabasis. It's like a small plucky military unit that marches into enemy territory to defeat an invasion, with magic that is strongly inspired by the Black Company and an understanding of chemistry that includes Derek Lowe's Things I Won't Work With. For anyone who's familiar with his In the Pipeline blog, there's some hilarious stuff there. Things that explode when you look at them, things that will burn through the sand that you try to put the fire out with, stuff like that. It's called Things I Won't Work With for a reason. So that's Graydon Saunders. Number 2, I think more people should read Arcus's work. Mm-hmm. The Daily Grind is his. Edge Cases is
Silver Linings. Yep. True. Sorry, I had them both on the same podcast. That was my mistake.
Got it. Yeah. They do sometimes come as a unit. But Argus is The Daily Grind.
Heyo, phrasing.
The Daily Grind and Kitty Cal Kill Sat and Sublife Crisis. Argus is a master at like pro-social speculative fiction of, you know, making you see the potential for building a better world by the work of your hands.
Very
And
hope-monkey.
also the magic is just freaking weird, and I love it. Number 3, Foxfire Esquire by October, aka Noah.
I saw that.
This is on Railroad. I think it's currently dropping in Rising Stars. It is the superheroes legal drama that I did not know I needed.
Oh, Drew's gonna love this. My
Noah-
agent partner, he's a lawyer.
Okay, yeah, gonna love this. So Noah is the author of Pound the Table, which was a Marvel fanfic legal drama, and she is a lawyer herself. She has done, you know, her share of being in the courtroom and of all of the sort of infrastructure of law, like discovery and voir dire, et cetera, et cetera. And so this just takes everything that she learned from writing a legal drama fanfic and puts it into her own original story. Foxfire Esquire is amazing. It is a legal drama in every sense of the word. It is dramatic. It is full of a genuine understanding of the law that is still accessible to lay people. It is full of character that is revealed in quite deft ways, I think. And the main character is a fox lady with like a fox familiar kind of guy, which I think is cool.
Excellent. I wonder how many people got that reference.
I don't think I did.
That's fine.
Alas. Yeah, so the fourth one is To Sunspot by Yudi.
Ooh.
Sunspot is probably the single nerdiest thing I've ever read, and that is saying a lot. Sunspot has the magic system in Sunspot. Sunspot is notionally basically a magical girl story. But the magic system in Sunspot is expressed through hyperdimensional glyphs, like hyperdimensional glyphic runes or runic glyphs that have a mathematical framework that is not like explicitly described in terms of like, here's the math for it, but the main character has been obsessed with this magical system and the math of this system, and is sort of the top civilian expert in it. And just like every time Ezen and someone else get to talk shop about like all of the little bits and pieces and also the big stuff of the magic system, my heart just sort of goes, because I'm not much of a nerd. But it's also, the character work is impeccable, and I don't know, the sort of descriptive prose is like, I wish I could just spend some time studying it, but I have to be writing. And the final story that I want to give a shout out to is an author who actually is like totally successful and does not need more readers, but more people need to read her. Jo Walton is the queen of philosophical science fiction and fantasy. She is there is nobody else who has written a 3-book series interrogating Plato's Republic and sort of what would it look like if the Greek gods took it and tried to test to see what kind of society could come out from it. And she's definitely the only author who did that and made it amazing. All 3 books, The Just City is the first in the Thessaly trilogy, are spectacular. Everything she writes is not just deeply philosophical, which it is, not just incredibly thoughtful, but also is a fucking amazing novel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that pretty much every Royal Road author could stand to read her work and study how she can deliver like an amazing story that has not just a point, but that is structured around a point, around a philosophy. And a philosophy that she might not even share. Certainly, she's not a devout Catholic, but she wrote a book called Lent, which is the only book I've ever read to steelman Catholicism. From the stand, like, and it has an incredible, like, a third of the way through the novel twist, which I don't want to spoil, but because it's just such a beautiful twist that I think particularly Royal Road authors and readers will love if you give that book a shot and get to it.
Okay, so main character levels up. No.
Close.
It's just a jump joke. Do not, because we have to look at the time. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Aaron.
It has been a pleasure.
Pleasure has been mine. In general, everyone, thank you again for listening and or watching. There is more stuff on my Patreon. I'm almost legally obliged to point that out. There's always going to be about like 1 hour of bonus material for every single show that I do, for some even more. And yeah, go and read Quill Still. And also, last but not least, there is a new Brandon Sanderson lecture series that I don't think needs any shouting out. But if you weren't aware of it, he's got really good advice. Especially one thing considering tropes that he said that really interested me, because he was talking about romance, but it's applicable here. And the short of it was, some readers really want tropes and tropes only. That's why in romance, you have like a checklist of stuff before the actual summary of the book. Like, this is a non-cheating romance with a mafiosi guy who is enemies to lovers and like that sort of stuff. And I hate to break it to you guys, but that's exactly the same thing as like, this is an OPMC OP male MC Isekai cultivation story. Like, that's exactly the same thing.
Slow burn, weak to strong.
Exactly. And that's what people want, and that's fine. But then you also need to deliver on it. And that's also one of the reasons why, if you are not delivering on that, you shouldn't be surprised if you don't have like breakout success on Royal Road. That being said, thank you everyone for listening and or watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you're on Patreon, the show goes on.